Intramuros was the biggest European city in Asia. It defines our culture. The problem is most of our officials do not appreciate it.
It's important because it's part of our history, part of our heritage, and one of the few physical evidences remaining of the Spanish period of Philippine history.
There are many good stories about Filipinos, people who headed the construction of the walls. The carvers were Filipinos also. It was a very exciting time. That's what I remember most, having a restoration force as big as Intramuros was at the time. Well, didn't exist anywhere in the country. When we came into Intramuros to work, what are we restoring? We do not know. How did it look, except for the ruined walls? That's why we have to dig pictures and pictures and pictures just to be able to provide a background.
And in the early days, it was really a dead town. Even when Casa Manila was finished, we would make whatever pakulo just to bring in people.
The greatest satisfaction I had was the presence of a good team because basically the three of us were the ones who set the initial directions of the Intramuros Administration.
Since last year, I'm really amazed at how Intramuros has grown and has attracted so many people considering the problems we had in the beginning. They have thousands of people coming here and all of them are paying the entrance fees, restaurants, all those cales. Can you imagine? It's alive.
You have many people saying that Intramuros should not be preserved because it is a colonial memory and that should be erased. I don't think so. So it's about time that our people should see Intramuros is not just a symbol of colonialization, but a symbol of our spirit to rise above that.
Intramuros for me is a place that tells you the story of Manila, the city that I was born in, the city that I worked in, and the city that I live in and will probably live in for the next years. My life with Intramuros began in 1999 when I started volunteering for a museum, Bahay Chinoy. And it was from there that I started doing cultural work, and eventually which led to us establishing our tour outfit in 2005. Intramuros is a place of a lot of personal memories for me because I've been coming here since I was a little boy. I remember my first trip here was in the 1980s when we had a school trip at San Agustin Museum. And I distinctly remember getting freaked out because I went to a crypt with lots of dead people and which nobody really explained what they were. So that fascination with Manila's history, with my personal family's history, began here in Intramuros. I think what we do here in Intramuros introduces people to our city. And by introducing Intramuros to our visitors, we tell them the story and we make them understand the city, my city, Manila, what it was, how it is today, and what it will be in the future. My hopes for Intramuros is to be a place that is anchored in its past, but at the same time, it's a place that can have new ideas for the future. No? A place that will inspire people, a place that will create good memories, and a place that will make you feel good about being a Manileño. I'm Ivan Mandy. I'm a cultural guide from Old Manila Walks, and we have been doing historical walks around the old city since 2005. I see myself as a cultural worker and a storyteller, and I tell basically the story of our city. And the story of Manila begins here in Intramuros.
Every great and important city has an old town. Intramuros to me is Manila's old town. I have always been awed by Intramuros. It seems like when I'm coming here, there is an excitement that you feel that what happened in this place. There is something so sacred, so noble, so precious about Intramuros. I named it after my grandmother, Barbara, to just give it a Spanish flavor. And for some years, after a few years, we decided to really gear towards heritage so that people will see and know what is heritage, what is sinauna, yung kinaugalian natin, yung traditions natin, which will be seen in our cuisine and in our performances, in the dance that we present here in Barbara's. I would attribute it to my mom, to my mother, who taught me the value of work, the value of excellence, the value of feeding people in style and giving them satisfaction. I would want to happen that Intramuros will be remembered by every person who comes to this place because of its uniqueness, its sacredness, its history, its everything. There's so much here. I'm Barbara Gordon de los Reyes of Barbara's Heritage Restaurant. I have been in Intramuros for the past 30 years, which has been a great part of my work, my joys. It's like an adventure.
I'm Martin Tinio Jr. My lolo became chairman of the COMELEC, and he was the one who transferred the COMELEC to Intramuros. I was in grade school. He would go home at 6 o'clock every afternoon. They'd pick us up at 4 o'clock, so I had to wait for him in his office. So I would go around Intramuros in the early 50s. It was all ruins. I've always been interested in old houses. I began traveling throughout the whole country. Intramuros was the biggest European city in Asia. This is our history. It defines our culture. The problem is most of our officials do not appreciate it. IA was founded. And Jimmy Laya, I didn't know Jimmy Laya. He got me as a consultant. Then we started having exhibits. The first ever on relieves, on santos, on ivory. We have all these horrible looking modern buildings. I wish they could tear it down and rebuild it properly. And in the early days, it was really a dead town. Even when Casa Manila was finished, we would make whatever pakulo just to bring in people. In the afternoon, Intramuros was empty. Empty. There was hardly any people. Since last year, I'm really amazed at how Intramuros has grown and has attracted so many people, considering the problems we had in the beginning. They have thousands of people coming here, and all of them are paying entrance fees, restaurants, everything, all those cales. Can you imagine? It's alive. You can see the whole thing is alive.
As I always say before, whenever we say Manila, Manila was of course Intramuros, and during the Spanish period, and it was their prime city, and so everything that was about Philippine history and culture during the Spanish and of course the American period began and eventually developed in the walled city. And in the course of time, this would become also a prime urban tourism area, especially with the restoration and the heritage conservation that has been going on in the city. I think the biggest challenge for Intramuros is for it to be incorporated into that modernization without affecting the historical heritage of the walled city. I mean, accommodations can be done for the modernization that is happening. Internet, telephones, modern facilities for tourists, but it doesn't have to come at the sacrifice of what existed there before. I think that's one of the biggest challenge until today, for developing Intramuros. I'm Dr. Jose Victor Torres. I'm a associate professor here at the History Department of the De La Salle University. I teach Rizal and Philippine history here in the history department. Well, I think it's because it's one of the closest place. If you're a foreign visitor, it's one of the closest place and one of the most visited based on tourism information. It's one of the most visited places in Manila. Because you have to remember, Manila is the capital city. And a capital city has to have its attraction, both old and new. And for so many years, that old attraction, I don't mean old because it's passé, no? It's old because it's part of our past. And the realization that there was something that remained behind for the people to know and experience and see with their own eyes is probably something that's an experience, a good experience for visitors, both foreign and local. I'd probably siguro describe Intramuros as rich. It's rich in heritage, it's rich in the Filipino identity, and it's very rich in our history and culture. And I think that would fit the description not only before but today. And as I always said, whenever you walk through the streets of Intramuros, you are walking through Philippine history.
Intramuros is valuable not only for me but for the whole of the Bureau of Treasury because it's a convergence between the distant past and the present. Over the short span that I have served as the treasurer, I have seen how, through the efforts of the Intramuros Administration, places like Fort Santiago, the surrounding walls and gardens, the old churches, and the plazas have become vibrant attractions, showcasing the old alongside the new. So indeed, Intramuros is on the rise. I'm Rosalia De Leon. I'm currently the Treasurer of the Philippines and I've been working here in Intramuros since 2013. Well, personally, Intramuros is important again to me because I find solace after hard day's work. But remembering my childhood, our family would always hear masses in the Manila Cathedral, particularly during Easter Sundays, no? And just the same, there are also times when here in the Treasury, when our jobs will be very demanding, but as we see the surroundings of Intramuros, some sort of takes away, all this stress and reminds us of how lucky we are to be in this place, surrounded by the history of the Philippines around us. Hope that this treasure of ours could be preserved for the generations to come. I hope that we would not be detached, so we could reach out to more people and instill in them a deep sense of our history, the richness of our culture, and a deep sense of the very rich heritage that we have inherited from our forefathers.
It was a very exciting time. That's what I remember most. I was on a holiday and I got a frantic call. Where are you anyway? They have been looking for you. And I said, what about? Having a restoration force as big as Intramuros was at the time, well, didn't exist anywhere in the country. When we came into Intramuros to work, what are we restoring? We do not know. How did it look, except for the ruined walls? That's why we have to dig pictures and pictures and pictures just to be able to provide a background and tell people this is important, this part of the walls look like this. Everything was something that came to us by a calling, you'd say, that we have to do it right. Intramuros is a beautiful memory of the past. It is like a microcosm of all things good and bad. There are many good stories about Filipinos, people who headed the construction of the walls, and they were Indios. The carvers were Filipinos also. People should follow the regulations more, and that they should not seek exemption all the time. And this applies to both government, church, and private owners. I'm Esperanza Bunag Gatbonton. I was hired, I would say, I was one of the first employed in the Intramuros Administration structure, and that was pretty 1979. You have many people saying that Intramuros should not be preserved because it is a colonial memory and that should be erased. I don't think so. It represents failure. It represents achievement. So it's about time that our people should see Intramuros is not just a symbol of colonialization, but a symbol of our spirit to rise above that.
IA's dedication in ensuring that tangible treasures that immortalize our history are now accessible to the public is commendable.
Congratulations to the Intramuros Administration. I wasn't expecting that the collection can be so amazing. It was really an awesome experience seeing all of this collection, and it's like 30% only of the collection. I wish to see more. Again, congratulations.
Masasabi ko ito ay malaking isang tagumpay kasi matagal namin nakatago at hindi na i-display talaga sa public yan. Pangalawa, nagpalipat-lipat na ng location yan at ngayon, na-save natin.
Intramuros mahalaga para sa akin bilang Pilipino kasi maraming bagay sa Pilipinas dito nagsimula sa Intramuros. Well, actually, more than reviving the structures, ang gusto ko talaga maintindihan ng tao kung anong kontribusyon ng Intramuros sa pagmuno ng Pilipinas. Kasi kung walang pagkilala, walang pagmahal, hindi siya mananatili. Fernando Zialcita ako, Professor Emeritus sa Ateneo de Manila sa Department of Sociology and Anthropology. Ang mensahe ko lang, dapat mas nuanced, mas complex ang ating pagtingin sa kasaysayan. Kasi mahirap itong black and white pagtingin sa kasaysayan. Masyadong moralistic, basta Kastila masama. Dapat mas three-dimensional pagtingin sa kasaysayan.
So, hello, Matthew.
Hello, how are you?
I'm Francis.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Looking forward to.
I hope I'm doing Sonny Tinio justice. Hopefully.
Oh, I'm sure.
Hopefully.
I'm
Hopefully.
sure.
Yeah, I'm just gonna talk about how I knew him in very small amount of time. I think I knew him about 2017 till 2019. So very short period of time.
We're live now.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. All right.
welcome everyone to the 30th episode of the Intramuros Learning Sessions. I am Rancho Arcilia, and this episode is brought to you by the Intramuros Administration. Today we're going to have a tribute in memory of the late Martin Imperial Tinio, the great historian and antiquarian who we now consider as one of the pillars of IA. And later we're going to hear from Mr. Tinio's colleagues from the early 1980s. They will share with us their memories of Martin Tinio and why Intramuros would never be the same again after Martin Tinio. But for now, I'd like to read some house rules first for this webinar. So for Zoom attendees, you may raise your questions via the Q&A button. And for Facebook viewers, you may raise your questions in the comment section below. Questions are welcome, and we will try to accommodate as many as possible for this episode. Only those who have successfully registered and viewed on Zoom will be eligible to get a certificate. A feedback form will be emailed to you after the session, and the certificate will be sent within a week. Note that this webinar is recorded, and the recording shall be made permanently available in IA's social media channels. Now, I'd like to call on the Administrator of Intramuros, Attorney Guillermo Arcido, who will introduce for us today our speaker. Attorney?
Good evening, everyone. Tonight is a special conversation that we'll be having. We've been discussing for the past episodes the history and beauty of Intramuros, and we've covered a lot of topics. Today we feature one of the figures who was really responsible for the restoration of Intramuros. And up to the last time, he was still reporting and still working for Intramuros. So we'll be discussing for tonight Martin Tinio. And to lead us in the conversation for this evening will be Matthew Lopez. We first met Matthew during the 3 years ago when Carlos Eldran was planning for the Biennale. But along the way, we got to know him better, and he has been a part of the Intramuros administration as well. Matthew is an art researcher, independent curator, art advisor, and author. He holds a BA in political economy from the University of Asia and the Pacific. Presently, he's a museum consultant at the Fundación Sanso, and he has worked extensively and contributed as well to the CCP's Encyclopedia of Philippine Art in 2017, and continues to and has contributed to a special edition of the Philippine Panorama. So for tonight, hope you can join us as we listen to the life and the legacy of Martin.
Thank you, Attorney, for that introduction. Now, I'd like to call on our speaker, Mr. Lopez.
Hello, everyone. Good evening and good morning or good afternoon to wherever you are across the world. So thank you to Attorney Guillermo Arcido of the Intramuros Administration, to Rancho, to Sheena, and to the rest of the IA staff. And thank you for inviting me to this. It's a great honor to be with you tonight. So I would like to, let us begin. So okay. So tonight we will pay tribute to the man behind the enigma with a cheerful smile, Mr. Sonny Imperial Tinio Jr. So the title of this lecture, this short lecture, is called Ang Pamana ni Sonny, Remembering the Life and Legacy of Martin I. Tinio Jr. To dedicate this lecture, we want to dedicate this lecture to Tinio's late colleague, the late Hilda Cordero Fernando, writer, visual artist, book publisher, activist, and fashion designer. And if it was not for GCF, as she was lovingly called, we would not have the people like Sonny Tinio, who published books on architecture, would not have people like Nick Risho, who were beautiful, who was a great and eminent book designer, and the other authors that we now know and love, and whose works have now become references in their own. So tonight we're going to talk about a few points of how who was Sonny, why he developed such a gifted mind and such a huge and witty intellect, and how he used that intelligence of his for advocating for cultural heritage. And we want to know about a little bit of the private life of what people don't know about him. And lastly, why we should know about Sonny Tinio and why we should recognize his contribution to Philippine arts and art culture. I'll be honest, I first knew Sonny very late in life. I was just a researcher at the Cultural Center of the Philippines in 2017. And I was then asked by my boss, Nick Chongson, the editor-in-chief of the CCP Encyclopedia, to secure copyright release. And because of the copyright law, even images and videos have to be signed release forms. So I found out, I first knew Sonny first because I asked him to sign these documents. And later on, when I used to work for something called, I used to work for a prominent auction house where he was the chief consultant for their antiquities and furniture department, I then learned about him. And then one of the last things, in fact, one of the last times I first got to see him in person, he gladly signed my copy of his book, Sanctuary Silver, which is going to play prominently later on this presentation. In fact, he would comment that he always had a quote for him to know whether she should be talking to this person or not. So he had a quote, "You're always served well if you had a nice wristwatch and a good pen." So when Sonny was asking me to sign those copyright forms, I actually gave him my Lamy fountain pen for him to sign. And he noticed my vintage Swiss watch that I was wearing as well. And he even commented, "Nako, this guy, you're going far. You're doing well." So he gladly signed those release forms. And I take that as a maxim to life because it actually says to a person whether you're going to wear a nice wristwatch and a good pen. Anyway, we all know Sonny's death was quite a shock to us in the cultural heritage community. And glowing tributes have poured out since his passing. And to this date, even his books and his publication are still being sought after by book collectors, by dealers, by those who want to know about Philippine architecture, santos, and furniture. And it has been quite remarkable that even his own personal estate, who even offered some of his collection, has even brought a pretty penny at recent auction sales. As you can see here, I think about a few months after his death, some of the fixtures in the estate were even up for sale. So, just to give a little bio data, I actually checked Wikipedia last night, and sadly, there is no Wikipedia entry of Sonny Tinio, and sadly, there is not even an entry in the CCP Encyclopedia. So hopefully, this is a good start. So he was born Martin Jesus Tadeo Imperial Tinio Jr., born in June 25, 1943, and of course, he died last year on July 2019. He was 11 of 13 offspring and was married to Maria Victoria Vicky Tihanki. So as you know, he was interior designer, historian, antiquarian, cultural worker, gentleman farmer, and writer. And in fact, the photo that you see here was actually his favorite photo and was requested by the family to be one to be featured during his wake last year. Tinio was basically born into the gentry elite. In fact, he was descended from a revolutionary background. His great-grandfather was, of course, Manuel Tinio, who was the lead revolutionary general during the Philippine-American War and the Philippine Revolution. And unlike advocated by the recent movie Goyo, Manuel Tinio as actually the youngest Philippine Revolutionary General, and at the age of 20, while Gregorio del Pilar or Gorio was only 24. He later studied his primary and secondary education at the De La Salle College, which is now the De La Salle University in Taft Avenue. Tinio would even describe himself as one of his good boy days because he would say that he would always enjoy the company of his peers, and it just so happened some of his peers would also be his benefactors, patrons, and friends, including the late Ramon Boy Villegas, who was a close contributor and a close collaborator with Mr. Sonny. But what people forget was that Sonny was a farmer. And it started in the weirdest way possible. His own father, Martin Tinio Sr., decided to give him 1,000 hectares of land in southern Palawan to develop. As a rambunctious young adolescent 15-year-old boy, you are then decided, what do you do with such a big inheritance? So Tinio, with sheer determination, got himself and 200 families and tenants to move to the southern part of Palawan and redevelop it and to build. That's how he started his experience in farming. And as we will discuss later, that's how he learned how to taste real food. He will even describe this experience as where he truly found food by socializing with the locals, learning about Muslim cuisine, while his peers would not. And probably that we could say is probably that's how his first relationship and encountering racism and racist ideas, and how he encountered that, and how he sought to bridge those division through that point. He would later mention in a quote that he gave in a lecture. Since that experience, he learned how to eat anything and everything. And for him, if he saw something strange in wherever country he's been to or whatever place he go to, he will eat it, and that would be the first thing he will eat. And that would serve him well because at the age of 17, he would travel all the place, Switzerland. So he studied in a college preparatory school in the Institute Minerva, and as a 17-year-old kid trying to find their way to Europe, he would be placed under guardian. As Sonny would put it, there were only 20 Filipinos in the whole of Switzerland, and he was one of the 20. Most of them were sons of ambassadors, embassy officials, consuls, and the like. What was interesting with Sonny, and as he would lovingly would say, is that he was happy that he got a great guardian. And his guardian was no less by Dr. Eleuterio Teyet Pascual, who was 20 at the time and he was 17. On a side note, if you have the time to travel after the lockdowns abroad, I would highly suggest you visit the National Gallery Singapore, because the Pascual collections, particularly this picture here of La Banca, which is my favorite painting of Felix Resurrección Hidalgo, is on display right there. It's actually next to two versions of España Filipinas of owned by the National Gallery and of the Lopez Museum, which is currently on loan as well. So, Teyet and Sonny were quite a rambunctious pair. They were kind of like Bonnie and Clyde when it came to their mishaps and misadventures in Switzerland. He even would encounter a way in how they would get American goods. So he later said this. So in Switzerland, they were very strict. You couldn't get anything but chocolate, cream, and cheese. We wanted to get American goods. They even had no toilet paper. And the toilet paper there was Japanese paper or papel de Japón, and was so very slippery. So they didn't like that. So what they would do, they would go to Munich with Teyet Pascual's diplomatic Mercedes-Benz all the way from Switzerland to Munich, and then they would go shopping in the local military PX store. For those millennials who don't know what a PX is, within the group, what something called as the bases, PX basically a military exchange store where if you buy goods there, it is much cheaper than the retail price, and they give it discounted only for military officers, soldiers, and for diplomatic staff. So they would go to Munich, they will load up, they will drive that Mercedes-Benz Auto Munich, and they will load it up with all sorts of goods. Spam, toilet paper, canned goods, pork and beans, you name it. Chocolate, candies, so things that you could not get in Switzerland. And they would bring it up to the point that the Mercedes-Benz will be filled to the brim and would even break down often. And this was a monthly occurrence for him. And that's how he enjoyed. And he would even tell tales that he would go to Venice for shrimp. He will go to Schaffhausen for steak, and he will go to Berlin for beer, and he will go for this do this on a weekend when he is bored, and he will just invite his classmates or ask to come along with his classmates to just go drink and eat. So, but all things comes to an end in Switzerland and in Europe when he goes to the U.S. So people forgot that he actually was a graduate of New York University and he finished a degree in commerce. This is despite the myth that he actually was a graduate of architecture. So I wish to set the record straight that he actually finished a college degree on the basis he wanted his own father wanted him to work in the family business in banking. But he did not pursue his first love, which was architecture. But as you will know, architecture will play a significant part in his relationship with IA later on. And he would say that he also enjoyed New York. He would say he was given $20,000 to spend, and he was in good company. He was classmates to ministers, beauty queens, sheikhs from Kuwait and Egypt, and those rambunctious people. So he always had that love for being a socialite. He always loved to wheel and deal with the high people of society. And it will serve him well, especially of where he would go as a consultant, as an interior designer, and as a bon vivant gourmand. When he returns back to Manila, he would return to the family business. In fact, his father was then the original incorporators of the Philippine Commercial Industrial Bank, or PCI Bank, which is now today the BDO building, and now BDO Bank. And you can see he worked in the international banking department, and if my record set to say, a few months, and he didn't like it. So he then entered to rural banking, and it only lasted for 6 months, if I'm not mistaken. And he also didn't like it. When I asked Sonny why he didn't pursue banking, he said that it was okay, but it was dreary. But he liked farming more. So he went back to Palawan. He went back to his hacienda to do his still in farming. In the meantime, Tinio would develop a serious taste in antiquities. Pre-Hispanic gold, ivory, santos, you name it. There's some photos here of some pieces that were recently auctioned off at Leon Gallery last year. This beautiful piece actually was miscategorized by the auction house as an Indian antique figurine. But we later, as the eminent collector Francis Ong will later point out, it's actually San Martin de Tours, if I'm not mistaken, from a Luzon provenance. And here would be a antique marble top table with a European style, which was also fetched for a very expensive, for a very record price. Tinio's break in writing would begin here, when Bob Fox, the anthropologist, one day called upon him, who he knew from his Palawan days, to join up the massive project known as Filipino Heritage. And I was fortunate to see this from Alfredo Roses. So I have to thank Alfredo Roses for posting it, and from Feliz Santa Maria, who's also joining us right now, for this project. Tinio was asked to write about articles on pre-Hispanic gold, architecture, and furniture. And he would actually ask, and when he was commented, he actually asked why him out of all people. So he needed someone to talk about it. And he would say, I didn't take up architecture. I didn't take up journalism. I can't write such a thing. And Bob's like, no, 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 you just write it. You will do fine. And to the date, as Sonny would say, he actually submitted his drafts and of his essays 3 days before they were set to print Filipino Heritage. And the editor was stunned because it was in near perfect grammar, no erasures, minimal revisions whatsoever, and went through. And because of that, it helped him well because his essays will be picked up by our good friend, Dr. Jaime Jimmy Laya, the first action officer of the Intramuros Administration and later Central Bank Governor and Minister of the Budget. So, as you know, Tinio was appointed as consultant for research of IA, primarily on architect on ivory, santos, and relieves. But his biggest contribution to Intramuros was his designing and co-collaborating of the interiors of the Casa Manila of the 19th century Bahay na Mato. And later, when you will hear from our panel from architect Ramon Monfausman, who's joining us right now, now, he will talk about his experiences. So Tinio, that would be his long-lasting legacy. And for me, more than Casa Manila, the visual part, I think one of the important contribution to IA was the literature that he published. So if you are trying to source these books, I know these are now out of print. So he will write about things about ivory, with Chitangat Ponton. He will write an excellent book on ecclesiastical silver. And most of these books are very expensive right now on the second-hand Filipiniana market right now. So I hope Attorney Gillier and Rancho will probably digitize at least these old catalogs so to be to be freely available to the public, or hopefully maybe reprint them. As things come to an end, Tinio decided to move on to greener pastures. So I want to quote a memorandum that he wrote, and he would say, "Thank you for having given me the happiest and most fulfilling years of my life. Being my first time in government service, it was certainly a learning experience." This was his resignation memorandum in 1986. And as you can see on the right side is the sad comment of Jimmy Laya of his sudden resignation, being a consultant of IA. But as we know, IA did not leave Sonny Tinio. And it was, I'm very fortunate, and we're very fortunate that one of the last tasks he did was he was part of the great curatorial team with Jack Pilar, with Chitangat Bonton, to be the curatorial team for the Museo de Intramuros. And the reason why we have the beautiful Santos, why we see the beautiful ecclesiastical art, especially the silver, is because of Sonny's curation and determination of what to exhibit and how to exhibit it. Well, we cannot talk about Sonny Tinio without talking his most important book to date, the reference known as Philippine Ancestral Houses. I last time checked online, and the last copy that was sold was about, in a secondary market, was 10,000 pesos. So this is a very rare, which is a very scarce book to find right now, because it's not only used not as a coffee table book because of the beautiful imagery by Lil Oshima of the beautiful 19th and 20th century houses, but of the complex and the technical detail that Sonny and Butch Zialcita, his co-author, would write. In fact, in the introduction, the late architectural historian Father Rodrigo Perez III would even comment that it was the most extensive, perceptive, and systematic study of the Bahay na Mato. Now, where it was not treated as nostalgia, but was treated as occasional scholarship that is now almost obsessively, thoroughly examined and with unparalleled affection. Interior design did not limit to Casa Manila, would even come to Cavite and Batangas. The reason why you see these ancestral houses and most of them well preserved is because of Sonny Tinio. In fact, Sonny Tinio was tasked to reconfigure and to redesign and to renovate properly to the T the houses in Taal and Kawit, Cavite. This one is of his most notable contribution, the Villavicencio Gift House, which has played a significant part in our history, especially in the Philippine Revolution. And it was said that the colors was well researched by Sonny Tino at the National Archives, down to the specific pantone of the yellow used. To the point, he would even comment, "Ay nako, these engineers, these younger architects, they're using the wrong shade. I'm trying to use not the right shades. I have to tell them, no, it's this color, not this color." It was very OC. He was very OC when it comes to that. But as you can see, these are the actual colors based on records, based on the research that he did, was how the interiors of the house would look like. And it will not be surprised, it goes from the houses in Batangas and Cavite to the most important real property in the country, Malacanang Palace. So in the 90s, Fidel Ramos, president of the country at the time, would then hire Tinio to hire Sonny Tinio to become the main consultant and curator of the Museo de Malacanang, which is now the present-day Presidential Museum and Library. Now, Tinio was also very meticulous because he would also catalog and would note the original furnishings and distinguish what was done during the 70s during the Marcos renovation, the Marcos renovation of Malacanang, to that of the original parts of Malacanang, at least down to at least the 30s, and even try to go as further as to the 19th century. And what he would do is that he would complement the furniture and with the paintings and the other furnishing to make it look like an assemblage of like how luxurious Malacanang Palace meant to be. Not just to meant for the highest official of the land, but to the forebears who used to haunt those palace grounds before. And in private practice, his consultant would not lead to just any place. He would also lead to the auction scene. And as you know, the Philippine auction world right now is booming right now with art selling for the millions. About a few hours ago in a Leon Gallery auction, a Atay bed done in the 19th century provenance just sold for a record 4 million pesos. So even furniture is getting the rave right now. And Ali Aguinaldo just sold for a record 40 million pesos as well. So can you imagine the time and place for him to see all these beautiful things, to write about it, to curate, and to note what is determined, which is genuine, which is fake. And it will lead to significant writings in catalogs, in essays, not only here and abroad. Here is a loving photo of Sonny looking at a beautiful 18th century, 17th to 18th century gilt silver monstrance of Philippine origin. And if I'm not mistaken, and this actual monstrance, which you can see here, is actually published in the visual arts volume of the CCP Encyclopedia. Tinio will continue. He always loved to giving lectures and talks, whether about his personal experiences or about Philippine silver, pinetas, the beautiful constructs of the mesa altar. He would always love to give these lectures because he's quite known, and for him it is selfish if you don't tell people about these things. so that they will not be appreciated by people. As you know, Sonny was always had the double with sickness, and until to the time of end of his life, he always continued to battle with cancer, sudden strokes, and as recently, kidney disease. But that never stopped his drive. He would always comment every time he got sick. He came out with a new book, and he did not want to waste time. For him, you only lived once, and you had to make the most out of it. And true enough, for every bout of sickness that came along, numerous publications he would write about. So he wrote about beautiful things like Pamanang Tilak for Ayala and Power and Faith Image for Ayala Museum. He will write a beautiful chapter on Philippine antique furniture for GCF's Turn of the Century. Side note, a copy of Turn of the Century sold for a record price for 32,000 pesos at auction. So if you have this book right now, you might be sitting on a small fortune right now. Anyway, so obviously Dr. Laya and Sani would be prominently featured in numerous books, Consuming Passions, his co-author with Tina Turalba and Dr. Laya on Philippine Heritage Homes, the guidebook. One of the beautiful books that I've seen, the Likha book for the Bangko Central Decorative Arts Collection with the late Boy Villegas, Cynthia Ongpin Valdez, and even Cora Alvina. And Sani was given the great honor and fortune to give the whole chapter on Asian furniture by Peter Moss. This is a very thick book that was published, if I'm not mistaken, in London, and is a survey of Southeast Asian and North Asia furniture. So he was given the honor to write the entire Philippine chapter. So he was asked, when I actually asked him about the chapter, he told me that, I'm weird because I wrote the whole chapter in 3 sittings and I had near perfect grammar. The editor just only asked me, how do you want the layout of the photo? How do you want the captions to be? Barely any mention about the text. The text was, they didn't question about in the text. Near grammar perfection with proper footnotes and reference. Anyway, as you know, he was a gourmand. He was a gourmand all throughout. He was a prominent feature of the Food Writers Association of the Philippines. And through, he would ask me, what is your favorite food? I asked Sonny. Sabi ni Sonny sa akin, alam mo, Matthew, ang paborito kong pagkain is what is served and is strange. And if I like it, I'll eat it. And one time, I had baon. I was then writing for an auction house, and we were seated together, and I was eating my baon, and my mom gave me a whole bag of Lifesaver gummy bears, and he noticed me eating those gummy bears. And I could not offer it to him because he was having dialysis at the time. But then Sunny came to me, what's this? Why do you have lifesavers? Oh, this is lifesavers. Is that the hard candy? No, this is the gummy bear. And he tried one and tried two. He ended up finishing half the bag. So that's how he loved food. He could not stop eating. And I even promised him one time I had bound, sige, I will buy you another one whole bag just for you to eat. And it's not stopped there. In fact, his love for food is well documented. In 2016, an American filmmaker by the name of Kayla Sotomil, she did a master's thesis on food studies at New York University, and then did a video series that documented Philippine cuisine, and prominently featured was Sonny Tinio. So I think we could show the video now, Rancho.
Okay. you're still sharing your screen. Yeah.
I don't know the English name for this. They're intestines. This one they call bulaklak. I'm not allowed to eat it, but it's so good. This Milas is the biggest lechon maker. During Christmas, they can sell up to 500 a day. If times are good. They sell their lechon by the 1 kilo. And you notice it's just it so that the wind does not hit the skin and make it soft. I eat Chinese way. I learned from my in-laws. You scrape off all the fat. Pork meat has no fat if you remove the fat. There was a boy, and they had in China, a boy living in a hut, and they had a pig in the yard. And then he was playing with fire, the house caught fire. The pig died in the fire. So when he saw the pig, he touched it, it was hot, so he put it in his finger in his mouth, and it tasted so good. He saw that if we roast the pig, it will taste good. So they started burning the house with the pig.
So as you can see in that short video, which you can see online on Vimeo, he loved food and he loved to teach about food. He would even tell people about recipes that are forgotten, especially of the recipes of Villa Escudero, his own family recipes, how to make um, stuffed bangus, and how they would make the numerous desserts that he would even serve to his guests in his house. Tinio's ideas were not just limited to architecture and to food. He used that for good, for he was an advocate for against the tearing down of cultural properties all throughout Metro Manila and across the world. He was a prominent member of the Advocates for Heritage Preservation, would give talks, and would even advise even some of the litigants who would even be filing the cases against the developers for the destruction of cultural property, even at a frail age and a frail condition. And what we even forget about is Sonny was actually an artist in itself, not in the terms of being an artist of being a painter or a sculptor, but was a consistent photographer. In fact, it was through him he was able to document most of the ancestral houses from Batangas to Jolo. And we were fortunate enough that before he passed away, a good portion of the photo collection that he cultivated was digitized by Wikimedia Commons, and then the actual negatives were donated to the Lopez Museum and Library. So hopefully, the people at Lopez Museum will be kind enough to do maybe a retrospective, hopefully an exhibition later on of Sonny Tinio's beautiful photography. And these were not just any photography. He would do photography of the houses, the architectural fittings. It is a rare archive that he did. And he would even do this to even the art objects and even the santos, the beautiful gilded silver that he would be encountering, the antiques during his time at the auction house. And that for him was his personal record. He never go away with his laptop and his handheld digicamera. And before that, a regular camera that he always took around with him for him to document. But for him, if he will he probably for him he will forget, but the photos will remain, and that will be his recollection. and that even helped him of how he will determine what house, for which place, from what time period, from which location, in which family. And it was said prior to his death, he was a hard worker. It was said in an interview that before he passed away, he actually tried to finish. He actually finished the second edition of Philippine Heritage Homes, Philippine Heritage Houses, and also a upcoming book on the treasures of Malacanang. I'm hoping the estate, and I know the estate and the family of Sonny Tinio is joining us right now. Hopefully, we'll make that publication happen so that we can enjoy it, so that the words of Sonny will continue. For me, this is why we should recognize Sonny. For Sonny was not just a gentleman, a farmer, an antiquities expert, or a heritage advocate. He was all throughout a modern day ilustrado who loved life to the fullest, but also cared for our nation. And that for him and the writings and the contribution his love is basically his pamana to the nation. And for that, we as a nation must thank him, and we must relish, and we must fight for what is right. Thank you and good evening and good morning.
Uh, Thank you, Matthew. Are we supposed to play the video now?
Yes, please.
I'm Martin Tinio Jr. My lolo became chairman of the COMELEC, and he was the one who transferred the COMELEC to Intramuros. I was in grade school. He would go home at 6 o'clock every afternoon. They pick us up at 4 o'clock, so I have to wait for him in his office. So I would go around Intramuros in the early 50s. It was all ruins. I've always been interested in old houses. I began traveling throughout the whole country. Intramuros was the biggest European city in Asia. This is our history. It defines our culture. The problem is most of our officials do not appreciate it. IA was founded. And Jimmy Laya, I didn't know Jimmy Laya. He got me as a consultant. Then we started having exhibits. The first ever on relieves, on santos, on ivory. We have all these horrible looking modern buildings. I wish they could tear it down and rebuild it properly. And in the early days, it was really a dead town. Even when Casa Manila was finished, we would make whatever pakulo just to bring in people. In the afternoon, Intramuros was empty. Empty. There was hardly any people. Since last year, I'm really amazed at how Intramuros has grown and has attracted so many people, considering the problems we had in the beginning. There are thousands of people coming here, and all of them are paying the entrance fees, restaurants, all those chalets. You can imagine, it's alive. You can see the whole thing is alive.
Thank you, Matthew, for that talk. Now we are pleased to say that we have today four distinguished guests who will share with us their memories of the late Sonny Tinio. For this episode, we have Sonny's former colleagues when he was at the Intramuros Administration in the 1980s. So for this episode, we will have Miss Sandra Castro Baker, who was the former curator at the IA Museum Division. We also have Francis Arispaco, who was the former chief of the Museum Division of IA. And of course, we also have architect J. Ramon Faustman, who was the former consultant for the restoration group of the Intramuros Administration. Now, for today's, for your sharing for today, dear guest, I will be asking you three questions basically. The first one is, tell us how you got to know Sonny Tinio, and would you like to share any special memories that you have with Sonny? And lastly, for you, how do you think did Sonny made a difference with the revitalization and restoration of Intramuros? Perhaps we can start with Miss Baker. You're on mute po. Miss Baker, you're on mute. Yeah.
I'm afraid that I'm afraid to say too much because I prepared something. So I'd rather architect Faustman start first and then Francis. Seniority before.
Yeah. Okay. So architect Faustman, would you like to say something for the next 5 to 7 minutes? You're on mute also.
Okay, how about now? Yeah?
Yes.
Well, I thought beauty before seniority. Anyway, it's fine. Sonny was just a super wonderful and charming person. He was lots of fun to be around. And you're right, his total fervor for these heritage structures we all shared. And he was beyond that, as you very excellently explained. He would not just go to the mere building, but it would be to the interiors, the details, even the way the food is prepared, and so on and so forth. The paintings and murals on the interiors. It was a very, very exciting, exhilarating experience to be around Sonny. And we all appreciated him very much. Basically, that's it. I wish we had more of him. Thank you very much. Okay, Sandra.
I think it's
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank you for inviting me here because I really loved working at Intramuros Administration. There was never a dull moment. There were a lot of firsts there. You know, first time the government collects colonial period collection. So when I was there, objects were flooding the storage rooms. We had so much work to do. So when I started, it was 1981. I was fresh from college and I joined the museum division. So Francis was my boss and Sonny was our big boss. Sonny would introduce us to the world of Philippine antiques. He brought us around old churches and old houses. That was his passion. And also, we got into food. So if you remember, Francis, we went to a hole in the wall in Quiapo. It was like very close to the mosque. And Sonny wanted us to try the food that was cooked by the Muslim Filipino community there. So it was fish or chicken in coconut milk. So that was very memorable. And I remember him saying once that, oh, actually I went to Nueva Ecija and I tried carinderia there. They were serving field mice. So Matthew, you're right in saying that he wants to try everything that is exotic. Definitely his main contribution to IA was curating Casa Manila, and his early exposure to Philippine antiques, especially furniture and silver. I don't know if there's anyone who can replace him in that aspect. So for Casa Manila, he didn't just select furniture and accessories for from the collection. He also did the decorative paintings and selected period plants for the outdoor sections of the house. Another thing that he contributed was the material for interpreting the lifestyle of the upper classes during the turn of the 20th century. This is documented in a guidebook and in the labels, but there is much more than that. I think Frances knows the script the best. So if you want to get the full Sonny Tinio tour, I think you should hire Frances. Or you should do her on YouTube. I just looked over the guidebook a few days ago, and I remember something that's not written there. And it's about the volada, that narrow space around the antesala and the sala. Sonny said that this was used by the servants when family or visitors were using the rooms, because they were not supposed to cross the rooms and distract the master and his superiors. Then he also created period characters. That's why you have a maiden aunt, the cranky maiden aunt, living in the entresuelo, and then you have the bachelor son there as well. So these were things that were of human interest, and it was important to say something like that, because that's what the general public appreciates. So that's what I remember of. That's what I remember of Sonny's work in Casa Manila, and I think to take his work further, researchers should follow through with what he did. I don't know if there are a lot of people now studying Philippine furniture. They should go to Casa Manila and examine these and scrutinize them and say, okay, is this Philippine or Chinese? And what about these paintings? Are they Philippine or not really Philippine? I think that's how you could continue the work of Sonny. So that's all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for that, Ms. Baker. Ms. Frances?
Hello, everybody. Good evening or good morning, as the case may be. I will always remember, first, your first question, how did I meet Sonny? Well, I was working in the Museum of Intramuros Administration, and then Sonny was asked to be a consultant of the museum. So then he was part of the acquisition panel at that time. So the antique dealers, the antique shops would send over relieves, santos, butacas, etc., for consideration of the acquisition panel, of which Sonny was a member. So he's really a fount of knowledge in furniture, in colonial silver, colonial jewelry, santos, you name it, including, of course, social history. That was a very important part of Sonny's fount of knowledge. Social history. In short, gossip.
Jeez,
But gossip of the 19th century or early 20th century. Of course, leading to the modern era, shall we say. So he will say, this family now, it's where, they started us like this. So no names mentioned, not tonight. But, he had all of those interesting stories. Now, let's see, you asked about memories. I have so many precious memories of Sunny, and some funny, some very touching, very poignant, or very striking. But they constitute the experiences that I shared with Sunny, and so they're very memorable to me. So, excuse me. I remember one time we went to Bohol on an exploratory trip to visit old churches and houses. And usually when we go to an out-of-town place, we would, if it's outside of Luzon and we didn't have the car, of his car, we would hire a jeepney, okay? And the driver will bring us all around the whole day, then on to the next day and to the next. So when we were in Bohol, the first place we would hit in the town, of course, is the old church. And then the houses around the plaza in front of the church. Usually those were the most prominent families, okay? Then we would go on to the side streets. So Sunny would say, okay, liko mo dyan, o yan. Tabi dyan, tabi, tabi. When we would see something interesting, he said, okay, stop. Then we would go out of the jeepney and take a look at the house. And then, of course, Matthew referred to his trusty camera. He had always had his trusty camera with him. Hindi pa digital noon, no? So he had those films pa na mga ASA 400. So then he would photograph, okay? Then we would look for the owner. And while Sonny would be taking photographs, and as Martin said, not just the regular photographs, he would take photographs of this corner and that corner and under the eaves. And so, he would go contorting himself, trying to take photos of every little architectural detail. And I would be explaining to the owner or to the son or whoever, the katiwala, why he's doing what he's doing, so that the katiwala will not send us out. So there was one time we saw this house, and it was so much earlier than the usual 19th century or early 20th century houses that we had seen so far. So this was much earlier, and that the house posts were tree trunks that were not reshaped. The shape of the tree trunks, so that was the house post. And then we went inside, and there was this staircase, and the banister was a huge branch of a tree with the nodes, etc. And Sonny was mesmerized, and he went and touched the banister with seeming awe. He touched it, and he was stroking it. He was even caressing it. And then he looks at me and says, Francis, this is hand-hewn. And then he looks around the house, he looks at the rooms, and then turns to me again and says, Francis, everything is hand-hewn. And, he had all this passion, and he had all this joy when he discovers these things. And he had this emotional attachment to the old houses and the old architectural details. And to think, this guy had seen hundreds or thousands of houses. He told me once that when he was a little boy, he would accompany his father from Manila to Nueva Ecija, and throughout their trip, province to province, town to town, he would look at the old houses and then remember them, appreciate them, and remember them, so that on subsequent trips with his father back to Nueva Ecija, he would really look forward to seeing these houses again. And he was so expectant, eagerly expectant, like, oh, this is now the town where I will see this house. And then the next town, the house on the left looks like this, you know. It's so, this was when he was a little boy. And decades and decades after, and thousands of houses after, when he discovers a house and he discovers all these treasures, he would still have that passion and that joy in discovering these things. And this passion and this living attachment was never died down. It was always there, no matter how many houses he had seen. And you know, I remember, I think it was in Marinduque or Cebu or somewhere. You can see how his mind works, okay? If he sees something and then somehow there's something off about this house, and he takes a look at it, and then he looks at the pattern, and then things fall into place, and he understands very quickly. Well, I know it doesn't sound like, it doesn't make much sense, but this is something that I can explain through this example. So we were walking down this street and we saw these two houses. Okay, they were neighboring houses, close to each other, but two distinct, different houses with a fence between the two of them. So clearly they were two different houses. So Sonny takes a look at the house on the right, looks at the house on the left, looks again at the house on the left and the right, and tells me, Frances, this is not two houses. This is one big house that they demolished. They demolished the middle part, so now it stands as two. But this is one big house, Frances. And I look, and Sonny, you're right. You know, the baluster there on the house on the right is exactly the same as on the left. You know, the pattern in the media agua there looks the same as that. So, you know, I mean, it was so easy for him. It was very instinctive for him. So that's, you know, ang bilis. That's how his mind worked. And, of course, Sonny Tinio, being Sonny, meron na siya kagad meron na siyang social history about the house. You know, I mean, it's an aberration. How could it have happened? So he told me, siguro yan. Pamana ng magkakapatid. Pero nag-awa yung mga magkakapatid. Kaya, yun siguro, giniba nila yung gitna para hiwalay na sila ngayon. So, that's Sonny for you, looking for an explanation. And, you know, pumasok na yung family dynamics and part of social history already. So, yun ang mga the things that, you know, make memories of him stand out. And Sandy was talking, well, I don't want to, I think I'm spending too much time, but just one more. Sandy talked about the time that we were acquiring pieces for the museum collection. And so when Sonny would see a beautifully carved relieve, he would say, oh, this is so beautiful. Look how the carving is. He would drool over it. But, you know, he was equally expressive when he would see a piece of shoddy craftsmanship, shoddy workmanship. Like this relieve is, then instead of saying just ugly or it's not well done, what he would say would be, trabahong paa. You know, first time for me to hear trabahong paa, but okay, then you get it, you know. I mean, trabahong paa would really result in shoddy work. So, you've always known Sonny to have high standards and to be very effusive when he sees a work of exceptional quality. But he would also be very mataray, very contemptuous even if he would see works of very shoddy quality. And so I remember that trabahong pa. Anyway, so that's Sonny for you. Very quirky, very a very colorful character. He's one of a kind, actually. So that was what made Sonny very interesting. Aside from, of course, I have what I've referred to as his fount of knowledge in so many fields, and I think this is this knowledge that he willingly passed on to others is his contribution to the field of heritage preservation in the Philippines. And he has inspired people to become appreciative of our history and our culture, and perhaps inspired more research work to be done, inspired more historical tours to be conducted for old churches and old houses. So, Tani, thank you for all that you have done for Philippine heritage preservation. And thank you, IA, for organizing this webinar so that we can get more people to know about Sonny and the very important work that he did. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Ms. Frances. Now I'd like to encourage our audience, if they have any questions, feel free to do so. So we have some time left for questions. And if you have any questions for our speakers directly, you can raise them in the Q&A button if you're in Zoom, or if you're in Facebook, you can comment your question in the comment section. So you can address your question either to the guests, to the panelists, or to Mr. Matthew Lopez. So for Architect Osman, what was it like during the early years of the restoration work in IA? How did you find Martin Tinio as how did you find Martin Tinio as a colleague, as in the workplace, as you were coming up with the master plan for the Barrio San Luis and for the Casa Manila?
To my recollection, Sonny Tinio was more involved towards the latter part, when we already had a concept of what we're going to do in that block, in my recollection, and after we had done the archaeological digs and all of that. And so he came and was very useful in the latter phase. First, declaring the need. We were all pitching in and this was refereed by Dr. Laya, who would then said, okay, this is what we're going to do after all the discussions and suggestions, the suggestions we all made. But he was very cooperative, and I was we would resolve certain issues, and of course I had my staff always on call. There was a time when we had a trailer there, and we were actually there during the early part of the construction. Of course, later on, there was no need for that once the buildings were basically up. And we were only called to, shall we say, refine this window, this detail here, and do that, which we had more or less done before from the research we had already done from the old houses that were in the Malacanang warehouse, plus all the historical plans that Chita Tonton had found, and details and so on and so forth. So he came more, he got more involved. He was involved in the acquisition, like what Francis was saying, along with Aldo Scudero and Dr. Laya as well. But again, as I mentioned earlier, he really provided tone and color to the whole experience of working with IA, and entertainment value too, to all of us in IA. Okay. Anything else?
We have a comment from Isabel P. Cornell. She said, just to say hello to Ramon, Sandy, and Francis. Lovely to see you again. So this is from Isabel.
Hi, Lilo. Lilo was
Hi,
our
Lilo.
archaeologist.
Yes, she's a frequent attender of our Intramuros learning sessions. How
Hi,
did you?
Lilo.
How can you describe the taste of Martin Tinio in terms of the antiques, in the acquisition of the antiques? Did he had any special preferences for any specific style or for any specific piece? Maybe Miss Sandy or Miss Frances can answer that.
Well, he liked furniture and silver, so he focused on those things, I think. I saw one question about what do you think were his 3 favorite pieces in Casa Manila. He always raved about the aparador in the master bedroom and the atay bed in the maiden aunt's room. I mean, like you said, the atay bed is very valuable today. Matthew, did you say it was sold for 4 million recently?
Hi. Yes, I think a atay bed sold about 4 million pesos, including buyer's premium. I'm not sure without taking into account buyer's premium. So just add maybe 16.8% to that 4 million peso hammer price. So you will get about almost near the 5 million peso mark. But that's very expensive. So you have a comparative analysis there. But I think if you're asking what would be Sunny's favorite thing to rave about, it would be, well, in my opinion, it would be furniture by, especially if done by Atay or by Isabelo Tampinco, and ivories and Santos.
Yeah.
He would love to rave about it. After this, when you go on Google, when you have time, you could look at the videos that he did for when he was explaining about the ivories are still there. So you will see how in depth in knowledge and how he would explain it properly, like this ivory piece, how it's carved, how it was shown properly, and then he will elaborate it further. And I think since Sandy mentioned about silver, I just want to show something. So actually, Sandy wrote a recent article on Arts of Asia magazine. So she wrote a beautiful. So I highly suggest our staff, our attendees as well, to read this article on Philippine colonial silver. Many of the things that Sunny I had to reread this again last night, because what Sandy was writing in her essay for Arts of Asia was actually what Sunny was explaining to me properly in detail when we were working together. And there were things that I wish, I don't know if he's here attending right now, but the social historian and gourmand, Augusto Toto Gonzalez III, lovingly will say to me, Matthew, when Sunny died, I feel sad. I say, why? You know what? I wish we built a machine to just scan his brain, because all of his memory, he's a fountain of knowledge, and we don't know what it is, whether it is bichika and chismis that is, take note, verified and researched properly. So that the chismes does not come from hearsay or from family stories. It is actually verified by documents that he even researched. And his extensive knowledge. I think one of the comments here, I was looking, one of the comments here, if Intramuros Administration would be reprinting or digitizing. Well, I hope Attorney Asido will be spurned to at least maybe scan. I think would be okay to digitize at least the old catalog. I wouldn't mind as well. And then, and then for people who want to pay a premium to reprint. But Sonny was very, for me, Sonny, I think for us to remember Sonny is his writings. You know, the books that he did, the publications he did, they are so. I even saw Miss. I think one of the Tinio family relatives were mentioning all different books that he even did. I couldn't fit all the covers into the PowerPoint because there's such so much. And like recently, as late as last night, I even found an old article from a forgotten catalog they did for the 1982 Manila Antiques exhibition. But again, I would not know because they're still out there, and it's someone will do probably a proper bibliography on his writings, and maybe later on, maybe republish some of his writing in his work.
Yeah, we at the IA, we shall work on the republication and the digitization of the books and other publication of IA as well. So stay tuned for that. So we're going to have an online library.
Oh, that's good. That's good. That's good news.
Yeah.
And we have a lot.
Another thing, oh, sorry.
And we have a lot of books for Martin Tinio actually. So we hope to upload those materials soon. Yes, Miss Baker.
Now, another thing that Sonny liked was the table in the entresuelo. When you come in, the table there with bone inlay, and people argue about the date that's inlaid there. Some people say it's 1891, and some people say it's 1821. So that's his other favorite piece.
Thank you for that. Earlier, it was mentioned that if ever Sonny did not like a piece of art or work, he would describe it as trabaho ng paa. And that's a very funny comment, no? How would you describe Sonny's humor while working with him in the 80s?
Francis, you answer.
A bit wry, a bit sardonic. He would also make puns, but he generally loved life, so he had a very cheerful disposition, except when he would see those pieces that are trabahong paa, that would destroy his day. But he had a cheerful disposition, so he was always inclined to see the bright side of something. At least that's my personal experience with him. And when he would be having a bit of a difficult day, and he would say, "Oh, I don't like this, I don't like that." So it would soon pass, and he would be in a good mood again. But he would have some dry and wry and sardonic bits of witticisms.
Ms. Baker, would you like to say anything?
I just thought of something. It's not about humor, but I think about his taste. I remember that he liked very intricately carved or engraved objects. Like he would describe how up-twisted pillar is so amazing. How he follows the line going up this pillar. He wasn't into minimalism, for sure.
No, not our Sonny. Not minimalism for Sonny.
I think the perfect. Well, it actually helps. Sometimes I just thought of it. I was looking at the connections right now. There was a connection. As I mentioned in my presentation, like his guardian was Tayet Pascual. And if you remember, I think it's been published I think it was published in the book of Dr. Laya, how cramped Tayet Pascual's collection was, even to the point the Amorsolos and the Hidalgos were hanging in the ceiling. So you felt like a horror vaki situation. one thing I would remember about Sonny, especially with not only about food, um, he was very stern. What I mean by stern, like, when he knew he didn't like something, he will not write about it. Even if he wasn't paid to ask to write about it, he will refuse. He's like, no, I will not write about this. And then if he has a why this it came from so and so, blah blah blah, blah. And I say no, because this thing is not Filipino, it's not from this provenance, la 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 la. He will write it all down and he will say it to the person. To the point that he will be like, okay, why are you okay, we will just give the writing job to another person. He was that stern and it showed integrity. Because for him, he was very crucial because all as long as we talk about how we love Sunny, about him being OC, he loved drooling about the beautiful things. He was very, I would say, yeah, that takes a lot of guts to tell someone off and say, I don't want to write about this. And that's very rare now, especially in this world, especially in the art world right now. So, and I think the youth, especially now, especially those who are the young guys who are into heritage preservation and cultural preservation, you have to have integrity. You have to have integrity because that will be your safeguard from what to tell what is wrong and what is right.
Was he also very stern as a mentor? How did you find him as a mentor?
Oh, he was a fun mentor. Oh, he was a fun mentor. When he said when a beautiful thing like when a beautiful relieve or furniture piece comes into mind, and there is a ano to? He will look at it and he will marvel about it. And when he knew something was up, he will give those subtle hints that you had to pick up. Ooh, it's 18th century, but it's Hispanic, and that's it. He will not say Hispano-Filipino, or he will not say like, oh, it is Batangas, and he will not, oh, it's Batangas, and I ask him the date, oh, it's just Batangas, and when he says that, those hints will be like, repo yan, this is new. So those are the subtle hints. So that's how I knew that, that's how he would tell me how he would determine the antiquity of the furniture. Truth be told, he is not infallible. I would like to point that out. He's not infallible. But nevertheless, when he says that when he makes a mistake, and he would tell it to me, he would take it as a learning lesson. I never got to appreciate antiques properly until I got into the CCP. But more so when I worked with Sonny and I learned from him. And I even tell to people, especially the young collectors right now, and you'll be surprised, there are many young collectors who are into antiques right now. So I wish to give a shout out to the guys like Emil Marañon, Floyd Quintos, and to Franz Ong amongst them, and Dr. Paul Foronda amongst them as well. These are young guys who are so into antiques right now and probably into furniture as well. And they will always consult with people like Sani, with the late Boy Villegas, with those reputable experts. But I want to say there's so few. So I hope in the best memory for Sani is obviously not republishing his work so we can read it again, but also we can train the next set of heritage preservation, the next set of antiquities and furnitures experts as well.
Thank you for that. We have a comment from the sister of Mr. Tinio. So this one is from Carmencita Tinio Katigbak. So she said, this is not a question but a sharing of a memory of Sonny, who was our oldest brother. As you all know, he loved and knew food to the point that he was often asked to judge food fairs. He would then complain after events that I'm so bundat, but I could not help myself. The food was so good. This is especially when it's about local specialties. He made a comment later on that he has eaten everything except human flesh.
Ooh.
Oh wow.
At home, he would
Yes. Okay.
At home, he would check the contents of the fridge and just put leftover ingredients together and produce a fantastic meal. So
That's very true. That's very true. Actually, I remember one time. I'm not too sure whether it was hopia or some sort of Chinese delicacy. He gave me some, and I would try it. And I actually thought he probably bought it from Binondo because knowing him has to be orig, and it has to come from the source. And he said, no, I made it myself. It's like, what? Yeah, no, I made it from scratch. So I'm like, I was outstanding. So I'm like, say, how can you make it outstanding? It's like, and he would tell me, Iho, if there is food in the fridge, and I can make it, and he has 3 cooks. I forgot to mention, he always had 3 cooks. In the family, they were known to have 3 cooks. And the 3 cooks were taught properly by Sonny how to cook the delicious delicacy that he liked. And to the recipes, to the T, to the point that when he does, I want this, they will make it for him. And I would be shocked at how detailed and how tasty it is that you would actually mistake it from the actual thing. So hopefully, even I trying to figure out, hopefully maybe the Tinio family themselves could cope up with a cookbook, because I think one thing that is not talked about, we've talked about it properly, but he hasn't written about, was the recipes. So maybe the Tinio family in the Tinio estate could maybe do a compilation of the family recipes and the recipes that has passed down to Sonny. So yeah, because that is what we forget. He was a genuine foodie. There I said he was the foodie, the OG of foodies talaga.
thank you for that, Matthew. Now, we have another special guest for today. So joining us today is Dr. Jaime Laya. He's now in Zoom, and he just to introduce Dr. Laya, he was the former action officer of the Intramuros Administration. In fact, the founding father of the Intramuros Administration. Hello, Dr. Laya. If it's okay with you, we would like to ask 3 questions regarding your memories with Mr. Sonny Tinio. The first one is, tell us how you got to know Sonny Tinio. And the second one, would you like to share any special memories that you have with Sonny? And third, for you, how do you think did Sonny made a difference in the restoration and revitalization of Intramuros?
Well, I really didn't know Sonny. The first time I heard of him was in connection with the book that he wrote on di ba, yung mga ancestral houses. So I heard of the name, I read the book, I was very impressed, so I looked for him. And so I found him, and I asked him to join us at Intramuros, and he was delighted to, in fact, join us. The initial assignment that he had was basically to help in the design of Casa Manila. So he helped in the arrangement of the furniture, of the interior design of the whole place. And in particular, he was responsible for the painting of the rooms as well as the exterior. So he picked the colors, and the basis of the choice was really the paint of that particular period. And I remember. He said that the ground floor, the adobe, ought to be painted, but it pained him to to cover in effect the stone, so he left it unpainted. But I remember that was one of the solecisms, one of the departures from the authenticity. It ought to have been painted. He recognized it, but he said it was a pity to paint the adobe. So that was one of the things that I remember of him. He had I had so many stories. Some of them I don't know if it's credible. Kasi sabi niya when he was, I think, 3 years old, he already liked antiques. So sabi niya, inakyat niya yung aparador nung lola niya because he was attracted by the ivory santo on the top level. At 3 years old, medyo it's a little difficult to believe. But anyway, that's what he said.
Thank you for that, Dr. Laya.
I caught you talking about food. Sabi niya, makakain ng mahusay unless the cutlery was solid silver, sterling silver daw. Kailangan ganun kasi hindi masarap kain.
Thank you for that, Dr. Laya, for that sharing. Actually, we are on time, so we are afraid that we are already at the end of our episode. And thank you, Dr. Laya, for catching up with us today. It is an honor that you can join us today. And I see that we still have a lot of questions. So we still have, I think, 40 plus questions.
Oh my God.
Here. And we can't accommodate them all due to lack of time. But if you want to contact the speaker and ask your question, feel free to do so. So Mr. Matthew Lopez is available via email, Instagram, and Twitter. So he is his email is tavale2013@live.com. So if you have any questions directed to Mr. Matthew, please feel free to do so. And feel free to follow us in our social media channels. So we are available in Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And for those who missed this episode or who came in late, don't worry because this episode is recorded and will be made available permanently in our YouTube channel. Just key in Intramuros Administration or go to the link bit.ly/IAILS. And then there are a lot of talk earlier about antiques. So the collection of the Casa Manila, the collection of the Museo de Intramuros, and we are proud to say that a lot of our collection has been digitized and is now available in our Google Arts and Culture page. So you can just key in Intramuros Administration in Google Arts and Culture to view our collection. Then we are also calling for papers for the second annual Young Scholars Conference. So for those who are interested in joining, you must have a completed original undergraduate thesis on Intramuros, and you must not be beyond 30 at the time of the presentation. The presentation or the conference will be in November 2020, and only unpublished research will be accepted. For more info, you can email us at archives@intramuros.gov.ph, and the call for paper is available at our website at intramuros.gov.ph, and the deadline is 28 September 2020. And then we are also happy to announce that Intramuros has been nominated as 2020 Asia's leading tourist attraction in the World Travel Awards Asian edition. So if you'd like to support us by voting, you can just go to the website worldtravelawards.com, create an account, verify your account, and then click in Intramuros for the nomination as Asia's leading tourist attraction. And we're also, the Philippines has also been nominated for several awards as well. So we are nominated for Asia's leading tourist board, Asia's leading dive destination, Asia's leading beach destination, and Asia's leading wedding destination for Cebu. Congratulations, Cebu. You have been nominated as Asia's leading wedding destination. And for all of our viewers, feel free to support us by voting in the website. So I guess that's it for this episode. Before we end, Can I ask our speakers if they have any last words before we go? Shall we start with Miss Castro Baker?
Thank you for inviting me to this webinar. I really valued my stay with Intramuros Administration. That's why I stayed there for 13 years. And every time I visit, I'm so delighted with what has been done with Intramuros and how so many people are coming in. It was not like that when we started. Thank you.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you for that. Ms. Francis, would you like to say any final words?
Well, thank you to Intramuros Administration for organizing this webinar. Thank you for inviting me. And thank you, Matthew. I think that this was a very informative talk that you did for Sonny, and it helped us get to know him more and to appreciate him more. And I hope that you and other people who are passionate advocates for our history and heritage will continue to do research and do studies and publish them so that other people will be inspired to also be advocates like you.
Thank you so much. Architect Postman.
Yes, I want to thank Dr. Laya. I hope he's still online. I haven't seen him in many years. And I wanted to congratulate the Intramuros Administration. It is a very welcome improvement that has been sustained up to now. I want to thank Matthew for speaking and enlightening us in greater detail what Sonny has been doing all these years since I left. And I want to thank you, Rancho, for inviting me to be a panelist.
And of course, Dr. Laya, before you say your last words, can I also make pahabol on a question? What was it like working with the original team back in the day? And then maybe some final message after that.
Can you repeat that? What was it like?
What was it like working with the original team in IA, which included Martin Tinio?
Well, the original team, much of the original team is present here. It was really a pleasure to work with them because not only of the knowledge, but of the enthusiasm that everybody had. And the talents were different. So we had Ramon, architect. We had Sonny Tinio. He was a storyteller. And he was basically the one who developed the storyline of Casa Manila. That it was the house of a bachelor who wanted to entertain, and and so on. So it was designed with an imagined resident and imagined descendants over a century. So that was his idea, and so he had so much expertise. And Sonny was really a storyteller. Parang, in fact, it was so difficult to get him to write. It was difficult to persuade him. And once you persuaded him, there was no end in his writing. Parang stream of consciousness. So, required a lot of shortening, editing, etc., etc. But he was really full of knowledge. So it was truly a great pleasure to work with the original team. Si Francis naman, very meticulous custodian of everything. She knew every single object where it was, and she really took good care of it.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Laya. And then finally, our main speaker for today, Matthew Lopez. Would you like to say any parting message before we end this webinar?
Well, I just want to thank first of all, thank you, Rancho, Sheena, Architect Giler, Johan, and the rest of the IA staff. If I failed to mention any else, I wish to already thank you for the opportunity to give you my insights. I hope I did Sonny justice. And I am very honored that the original team, headed by former Central Bank Governor Dr. Laya, Architect Faustman, Francis, and Sandy Baker have joined us tonight. Look, there's a lot to be said. Well, actually, I just want to add to what Dr. Laya said. Essential crammer si Sunny. Super. Super crammer si Sunny. Before an auction catalog would be published, I think he would write it like 3 days before it's about to be sent to the press. 3 days. So, 3 days, and he'll have his laptop and has the article with him. But I kid you not, near perfect grammar, no errors, less editing whatsoever. And it was easier for me to fix his essays in the catalog than the other writers as well, including myself. I want to say that Sonny is not an enigma. He's not just a name on a book. He's a living person. And, as I want to say that these were not just, people just in a book that we could use a reference at, but he was a true blue guy. He was a loving person. And we hope that there will be many Sonny Tinios who will come in our wake, both men and women. So, and I hope hopefully, I thank IA for this initiative, and hopefully there will be more guys like Sonny Tinio who will continue his legacy and continue, as I said, his Pamana to the nation. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Lopez. And to Miss Sandy, Miss Frances, Architect Fosman, and Dr. Laya, thank you for joining us today. It is truly an honor. And to all our viewers who joined us today, who are more than 300, thank you so much. And until our next episode of the Intramuros Learning Sessions. Good evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.